Hey folks, Pokey here from Biomass.com with another Project Nova news update. In this video, I wanted to go over the risk and reward mechanics in Project Nova. All of this is based off of the information released by the developers in the Dust 514 Veterans Discord server. If you'd like to read the transcripts, we have them available over at Biomass.com. Risk and reward work a little bit differently in Project Nova than you might expect from other New Eden games. In games like EVE Online and Dust 514, you buy assets, you craft modules, you craft ships, DROPSUITs, that sort of thing. You combine them all and you create fits. You take these fits into battle, and when you die, everything in that fit is lost and destroyed. So what ends up happening is that as you're dying, you're basically churning through all of your assets, and when you run out of them, you have to go back to the store or go back to the crafting and make more of them. So this model works really well for a game like EVE Online. You want death to matter, you want players to feel a true sense of loss when they die, and you want them to improve so they can avoid that loss in the future. And you don't die that much in EVE. Maybe once every 6 months, once every month, every couple days, depending on what you're doing. But the fact of the matter is that it's actually a pretty big span of time where you're going to be dying. In a first-person shooter, however, you could probably be dying 5, 10, 15 times in a single match. So that death is going to be occurring a lot more often. So you have to be really careful when you are looking at the weight of death in comparison between the two games. So in EVE, you have maybe like 2, 3, 4 fits of a particular ship. And because you're not dying as often, that's fine, that works. However, in a game like Dust or Project Nova, you're going to be dying much more frequently. And so an issue that players started to run into is that, let's say I had 10 of a particular DROPSUIT fit and I die 10 times and I try to respawn the 11th time, that fit is now invalid. I can't deploy with that because I have to go back to the market, restock the suit, restock the modules, restock the weapons, and this takes you out of the gameplay experience. And so what would happen is that players would just run out of fits mid-battle. Maybe it was a more costly battle than they expected, they were dying more often than they expected, and now they are sitting on a screen restocking mid-fight. And it really took players out of the experience, and it was not a very good system. So to counteract this problem, the developers have decided to make certain assets in your fit effectively unlimited. So things like your DROPSUIT, like the core DROPSUIT, things like the weapon, the core components you need to actually play the game are unlimited. You do not lose one per death like you did in Dust or like you would in EVE. They can be reused over and over and over again. Now, keep in mind that this doesn't mean that there is completely no loss per death. They're looking at the idea of you have like an ISK cost per death, so you're losing currency every time you die. So in a way, you're effectively auto-buying a new suit when you die, and that kind of helps keep the flow going, meaning that you aren't going to run out of a fit, you aren't going to be unable to respawn because it just charges you the cost to restock another fit, and you're on your way. So another issue is that because the cost of death was so high in the game, that after a while players would start to incur so much loss. Say they might be spending too much money restocking, or they're running out of a special asset or weapon they don't want to lose anymore. And so what they would do is they'd start to exert kind of this risk-adverse behavior, and they would pull back, they'd stop pushing for the objective, they'd stop trying to win, and they'd focus more on self-preservation. I'm going to hide in the red line, I'm going to hide in the spawn, and I'm going to snipe, or I'm just going to AFK and just, I don't want to lose anything anymore. And this is really frustrating because if you're a player who is trying to win, someone who is willing to, make that risk to push for more and try to pull that win out of a bad situation, if half your team is AFKing or not really trying, very discouraging for the player, and it was not a good gameplay experience overall. So the goal here is to remove some of the painful moments of dying, and they still want death to matter. They want you to be smart in how you play, but they don't want it to be so punishing that you stop wanting to play because of losses you've incurred mid-match. So to do this, they really want to reduce the amount of pain you feel per death, so you're encouraged to keep going, and more importantly, put a much bigger emphasis on winning the battle. They want the rewards for winning to be a much bigger jump as compared to losing, because in games like Dust, the payout between a win and a loss was not very big, so even if you lost, you still made decent money. They kind of want to widen that gap. They want people to try harder to pull out that win and kind of, get a bigger profit, but also not totally punish them by, destroying their bank account, by having them die so many times and losing a ton of money, a ton of assets per death. So another mechanic they're looking at is insurance, and this is primarily for new players, and it's going to be limited to lower tiered matches. You won't be able to use insurance in high tier matches, but for new players this is really useful because you're new to the game, you don't know how the risk and reward works because you just started playing, you don't know the maps, you don't know the weapons, you don't know all the systems yet. So they're trying to reduce kind of the pain for new players coming in to go, I have no idea what I'm doing, yet I'm losing all this money, I'm broke, I don't know what's going on. So with insurance, it basically allows you to lower the ISK cost per death, but it also decreases the payment at the end of the match. So I'm lowering my risk and lowering my reward. This kind of lets players pick and choose how much they want to risk and how much they potentially want to earn at the end of the match. And again, this is for lower tier battles, it's not for high tier battles. And when it is available, players will always have the option to opt out of it. So say you are an experienced player, you're in a lower tier battle, you are confident you're not going to die much, you can say, hey, I don't need the insurance, I'm good, I'm not going to die much, I want that higher profit margin. You can do that, you have that choice. But if you're a new player, you do have that option to get the insurance and maybe not feel the entire brunt of the whole risk reward mechanic, but you're not going to be able to farm a ton of money doing that. It's just a good way to learn the game. So the last thing I want to talk about are consumable items. So these are powerful assets that boost the performance of your drop suit, your weapon. The key difference is though that they are not unlimited. So they're not like your drop suit and your weapon where you're just using them over and over and over again and paying an ISK cost. They can be consumed. So the key difference here though is that they are not consumed per death like you might expect. They are instead consumed once at the end of the match. So let's say I take this consumable and I fit it to my drop suit. It doesn't matter if I die once, twice, 10 times, or even 0 times. At the end of the match, it's going to be consumed. So this is really important because it's not a per death loss. It is a guaranteed loss at the end of the match, regardless of what happens. It doesn't matter if you don't die, you're still going to lose it. You are committing it to the match and it's going to be lost. So you have to treat them as a fixed cost of doing the battle. Now, how this is a little bit different is that it matters because it's consumable, but it's not a, I want to avoid death to not lose this thing. It is more of a, I want to try to win because I want to maximize the profits to offset this fixed cost that I've assigned to the battle. So let's say you're using this in a battle and things aren't going well. You're not going to pull back because you're losing and you don't want to lose an asset. You're actually going to want to push harder because I know I'm going to lose this item. It costs, let's say, 10,000 ISK. And if I lose, I'm not going to make much money. But if I win, I'm going to get a higher payout. Because the cost is fixed, you want to push to win because it's a bigger profit margin, right? Where if you lose, it might be nothing. You might even lose money. But there's no loss in trying harder to pull out that win. And this is a key difference because in Dust, it was a, I want to avoid death because I'm losing assets. In Project Nova, it's, I want to win because I want to maximize that margin at the end of the battle. So what it really comes down to is, I know I'm going to assign a fixed cost to the battle. I'm going to use this set of consumables in this fight. You need to really look at how much are the consumables worth, how much is the payout for the win, how much is the payout for the loss, and you really want to balance how much am I going to assign to this battle, how much am I going to commit to this battle, and you really want to commit the absolute bare minimum it's going to take to pull out a win. So if you know your opponent's very strong and you want to pull out that win, you're going to have to commit stronger gear so you have that edge to win. If it's an easier battle, if your opponents are going to be a bit weaker, you're not going to want to use that overly powerful gear because it's going to cost the full amount. Even if you don't die, you're still going to lose that piece of gear and get maybe a smaller profit margin at the end, even if you win. If you use a lesser piece of gear, a lesser consumable, it costs less, the fixed cost is less, but the final payout will be, still large. So you're maximizing your profit that way. So it's really tuning down to what is the bare minimum I need to win, not I always use my best stuff because if I don't die, there's no loss. And so this kind of circles back to another issue that Dust had, which was kind of players going in with prototype gear into, lower tier matches. So what would happen is you would have groups of people with maxed out gear fighting players that probably weren't using as high of gear because the match was kind of a more casual public setting. And so they'd have a huge advantage over their opponents, and more often than not, they wouldn't die while doing the match. So effectively, those matches were 100% profit for the people doing this. And because they had large profit, it allowed them to use that money to buy more assets, which allowed them to have, this kind of ongoing chain of proto-stomping, which was a problem. Because the nature of consumable items is a guaranteed loss, this means that you can use your top tier stuff, but it doesn't really make sense if you're trying to, make money in the long run. Now, as a side note, you have to consider that because you're losing these consumables once per battle rather than once per death, that the cost and the barrier to obtain these items is going to be significantly higher in Project Nova than they were in Dust 514. Because in Dust, you might have a particular armor repairer that you're going to lose 10 times because you die 10 times, whereas in Project Nova, you're going to have just a single loss of that asset. So chances are it'll cost significantly more than what it would in Dust. So to wrap all of this up, you basically have unlimited drop suits, unlimited weapons. However, when you die, there is still an ISK cost associated with that death. So there is still loss per death. Additionally, that ISK cost can be reduced with insurance. This reduces the cost per death, but it also reduces the payout at the end of the match. So again, that's really geared towards newer players. It's not meant for high tier competitive play. You won't see it in, top tier gameplay, but it will help with a new player experience to kind of ease them into the whole mechanic. And if you're a veteran and you're playing, you can opt out of that insurance if you feel you can actually pull a larger profit without it. Additionally, you have the consumable items. These are items that are guaranteed to be lost at the end of the match, but do provide a substantial boost to your drop suit fitting. So again, it's a fixed cost of doing the battle, but it also kind of encourages you to use the appropriate power level for the type of outcome you're going to get and push you to actually try to win the match. So I know this is a big departure from what players are used to in Dust 514 and EVE Online, so I imagine it will come with some mixed reception, but it should be interesting to see how it all plays out in the end. And with that, I'm wrapping up this Project Nova news update. Catch us next time when we talk about the different types of drop suits and classes that will be in the game. And for all of your Project Nova related news and information, stay tuned to biomass.com.